Hello, welcome to the All About the Bram Stoker Awards panel, part of the HWA's Halloween in July or August, depending on when you're viewing this, a summer promotion that the HWA does to do some fundraising and make sure that we all have a healthy dose of Halloween spirit during those lean summer months when we're all thinking about the October winds and dry leaves and skeletons hanging from people's front doors just around the corner. As you can see, Laura is getting right into the spirit. Perfect. So we're going to talk about the Bram Stoker Awards. We're going to dig into the rules and regulations, the processes, myths and facts, misunderstandings, and all sorts of cool stuff like that. And we're going to start off this panel with a little bit of some introductions. I'm going to pass this off to Lisa Morton to tell us a little bit about herself, and then we'll hear from the other panelists, and then we'll jump right in. So Lisa, take it away.
Thank you, Jim. I am Lisa Morton. I am a former president of HWA. I served for 5 years. I've held a number of other positions in the organization, so I know quite a lot about it and how the Stoker Awards work and so forth. I am a 6-time winner of the awards, an 11-time nominee, as crazy as that sounds. My most recent book, which was nominated for a Stoker Award, was The Art of the Zombie Movie. It was up in the long nonfiction category. I have to remind myself that we now have a short nonfiction category as well. And my most recent release just a month ago was a novella called Placerita, which was co-authored with John Palisano.
I'm Alex Hoflick. I've been serving as the jury coordinator on the Bram Stoker Awards Committee for the past several years. Prior to that, I served as a jurist for several years, and I've also served as one of the final jurors for the UG Award for UG Foster Memorial Award for short fiction, and for the past decade plus, I've been involved with editing at Pseudopod. So, Laura?
Hi, I'm Laura Blackwell. I am the administrative co-chair on the Bram Stoker Award Committee, which means that I'm sort of doing the nuts and bolts stuff. I also have experience in the past on Bram Stoker jury, and I do a lot of copy editing as well as writing in horror and some dark fantasy.
And recent winner of not just a rock, but a sundial.
Oh my gosh, yes. Recent winner of a Shirley Jackson Award.
Which is awesome. Yes, congratulations, Laura. That's
Thank you.
fantastic. And I am James Chambers. I'm currently the board liaison for the Bram Stoker Awards. I was, until recently, the administrative co-chair, and was happy to hand that role off to Laura, who is eager to take that on. My deceptions and connivances worked perfectly. And I am a longtime volunteer in the HWA. I have served on various other committees, the membership committee, have coordinated Horror University, and one of the co-organizers of StokerCon and various other things like that. I am a 4-time Bram Stoker Award nominee, 1-time recipient, and was not on the ballot last year. So Lisa, you got the edge on me there. Although I think with your 11 nominations, you're way out ahead of the pack. So. But one of the things that, and it's funny that I was just talking about the awards that way, because we're really discussing before we jumped into this, what the nature of the Bram Stoker Awards really is, I guess, or what the awards really are about. And it's not something that we look at in that sort of competitive spirit that you might apply to athletics or other sorts of awards or competitions, because it's hard to be, it's really hard to say there are winners which implies that there are losers when it comes to creative work. And so the Bram Stoker Awards have always been, I think, since the inception, and I'm going to let Lisa talk about that a bit more, have always been about recognizing superior achievement. So Lisa, can you give us some insight into that aspect of the awards and the history of the awards?
And I apologize for using winners in my own introduction. I meant to say superior achievement and recipient. And just a quick note, a personal note on that, which is that the two things I am proudest of in my personal Bram Stoker Award history are two of the nominations, not even two of the wins. I am tremendously proud of two of the nominations, especially the one I got in the novel category. To me, that was being one of the 5 nominated novels was every bit as exciting as actually becoming a recipient. So that's my own little personal note there. But the awards have been around almost as long as HWA. They started a year after the organization was founded, and there was a little bit of controversy when they were started. There were people like the president at the time, who was Dean Koontz, who felt like maybe the organization should not be giving awards. But there also was nothing else that recognized horror at that time except the World Fantasy Award. So it was something that we thought was a gap that needed to be filled. And so when the award started, and I think it was 1987, there were 6 categories at first. They set up the process, which has remained essentially the same, except that a few years ago we added a jury possibility. Originally, the awards were completely recommended and voted on by members. There were no juries involved. And like I said, we started with about 6 categories. Now, the design of the actual award itself is fun. If anyone hasn't seen one of these up close, this is the Bram Stoker Award trophy, which originally was dubbed an usher. The basic design of this trophy was by Harlan Ellison, working with a sculptor, I think, named Stephen Kirk. It is a 360-degree haunted house, which is cool. And the little door at the front swings open, and inside is your plate that shows your name and the name of the work that you've won, that you have been a recipient for, and the year, of course, and all that. So the design of the award, like I said, has not changed from its original inauguration. Now, over the years, we have added many categories. We are now up to, I
13.
made okay, good.
Yeah.
And we have added over the years things like screenplay was not in the original 6, the young adult and middle grade categories, short nonfiction. So these are all things that have been added. In addition to the awards that recognize superior achievement in individual writing categories, there is a Lifetime Achievement Award, which is presented to an individual who is voted on by a committee. And in that one is not a member voted award, but the members can make recommendations for people they believe are deserving of that lifetime recognition. And the along with the Stokers, there are a few other things that are service awards. There's the Final Frame Award, which is voted on at the StokerCon every year. That is partly by a committee of film professionals who watch all of the movies. And there's also a member favorite on the film award. So with the Stoker Award process, it was, I think, maybe not even all that long ago, 10 years ago or so, that a jury component was added. Originally, you had to accrue a certain number of member recommendations in order to advance to the next step, which was a preliminary ballot. And it used to be 5, although the works that got the most recommendations, the top 5, were the ones that advanced, but you had to have at least 5 recommendations to make it onto the preliminary ballot. But because many members requested it, we instituted a jury component about a decade or so ago. The juries read everything. They are incredibly hardworking. It, I think, is a tremendous both a duty and an honor to be a Stoker Award jurist on any of the categories. And there are different juries for each category, unlike the Shirley Jackson Awards, where one jury reads all of the categories. And I think those people are superheroes to be able to do that much reading. So these with the Stokers, it is individual juries for each category. So the way you can get onto the preliminary ballot, you can either come in through the jury, which has read everything and has decided that you may have one of the 5 best works of the year, or you can come in with the members saying, hey, a lot of us really loved your book. So that is kind of the brief history of the Stoker Awards. We are coming up on 40 years of these awards. That is just a couple of years away, and that's quite a landmark, I think, and something that everyone who's been involved with this award system should be very proud of.
Lisa,
Yeah,
thank you so much for the insight into the history of the awards and kind of outlining the framework. I did not know Dean Koontz was sort of opposed to the awards, or maybe didn't think they were such a hot idea. That's very interesting.
In fact, he won one once. He won in the young adult category, and he sent us a lovely letter politely declining.
Wow. Okay, that's impressive. So he really stuck to his position on that. That's great.
Indeed. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So Laura, do you want to give us a bit of information about how the awards actually work? So Lisa mentioned the recommendation process and the jury process. And
Yes,
yeah, that would be terrific.
sure. Now, I'm still relatively new to this, so if I get anything wrong, please jump in and correct me. And I will let Alex talk about the jury process. The recommendation process is really interesting. I think a lot of people don't know that if you look at the recommended works list, that is also a nomination list. And another thing is that if you look on that wonderful recommendation list where you're getting a lot of your reading for the whole year, you may look at it and you may not, and you may want to add something you like, but people tend to look at something and say, oh, that one's great, I love that. And they don't really realize that that doesn't mean that it's going to toward the ballot and it's not going to be sent toward the jury just on the strength of that. If you see it there, that means it has 1 or more. And if it has just 1, that means it needs 7 more people to nominate it for it to end up on the preliminary ballot. The jury selections and the nominees from the general nomination go about half and half to the preliminary ballot, unless there are not enough from the general nominations, which does happen sometimes. And so the jury does nominate enough that we could go with a complete list of just jury nominations, but I'm not aware of that having happened in recent years, if ever. And I hope that it doesn't have to, because I love that we have this dual process. If you have any questions, because a lot of people do have questions about eligibility, about how to handle these 2 different streams, the first thing I would say is yes, absolutely pursue both. Follow the rules that are posted for how you can let people know that it's available for nomination, how you can offer it for nomination. Never ever badger or bargain for nominations. That is not okay and is actually against the rules. But it is definitely good to make sure people are aware of your work and also to get it submitted through the jury. And it is really best to do both. But if there are questions, it is good to write to us and ask. And we're pretty easy to find. We're at stokerchair@horror.org.
Yeah, we're happy to answer any questions that you might have. Don't feel like any question is silly or unworthy of asking. And I will, Laura, just jump in with one slight adjustment to what you were saying, which is that I would say the works that appear on the recommended list are not technically considered nominations by the Bram Stoker Awards rules. They're just recommendations, and not the awards allow the word nominee or nominated to be used only for works that appear on the final ballot. So while you're in a generic sense, somebody is nominating a work to be considered is sort of equal to recommending a work to be considered. I just, for sake of clarity in the awards rules, because we get that question often, and we've had issues where people whose work appeared on the preliminary ballot were
Right.
describing themselves as nominees, or their work was nominated. And that's not really how the rules of the awards recognize those works. So it's just something to kind of keep in mind.
Yes. Thank you
Uh,
for clarifying that, Jim. But I had the
Yeah.
basic process right.
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah. Everything
Just
else,
the wrong word for it.
that's, yep. And it's only because the awards have that distinction in them that we try to stick to the terminology. But the number of recommendations it took to be eligible to appear on the ballot, what used to be 5, we raised it to 8 recently, I think 2 years ago, in recognition of the growing membership of the HWA. Back when there were 400 members in the HWA, 5 recommendations to be eligible was a pretty reasonable number. Now there are 2,000 members in the HWA, and we raised it to 8. We conceivably could raise that again, depending on the dynamics of the award. The awards process, we do pay attention. We do check engagement every year and look at which categories people are recommending works for, which ones are getting sort of light submissions for the recommendations, things like that. And we try to keep things balanced so that we maintain that partial juried dynamic, which works so well, so that you get the juried list and the list from the recommended works. And as Laura said, we take the top 5 in each category to form the preliminary ballot. Sometimes if we don't have enough works that qualify on the recommendations, then an additional juried pick will be added. And so you can wind up with more jury picks on the preliminary ballot, but you can't wind up with more recommended works on the preliminary ballot than 5. And the jury piece of it is really, I think, it's its own fascinating process, and it requires a ton of work from a lot of dedicated people. And I'm going to let Alex talk about that. And then Alex, after we cover juries, I think maybe we can chat just a bit about the verifiers and compilers and kind of talk about those aspects of the process so people understand what's happening behind the scenes there too.
Yeah. So with the juries, we've got 13 juries for each of the categories, and there needs to be at least 5 members of five members on each of the juries. So at its baseline, you're talking 65 volunteers offering to read a substantial number of works. There's some of the categories that have exceptionally high volume. So we want to make sure that we've got more volunteers on those juries than just the minimum number of 5. So we've got somewhere closer to 80 or 85 volunteers on the juries. And the submissions to the juries generally open in March, and there's a HWA uses Submittable, which is a submission application that I'm sure a lot of writers are familiar with. There's a lot of print venues that also utilize Submittable. Lots of folks have accounts, and easy to, an account's free, costs nothing to send anything in. You don't have to be a member to submit something to the jury. And the Submissions go from March when it opens through November 30th for everything published in the first 11 months of the year. Just for December, the only things that are eligible for the jury to consider are works published in December. Some of the challenges with being able to consume all that volume, there are a lot of people and organizations that wait until the last minute. As a lifelong procrastinator, I can sympathize with that a lot. Do yourself and your work a favor and submit it to the juries at your earliest convenience. The earlier it gets in, the more time that you have given the jury to be able to fully appreciate your work, and for the whole group to have really fully appreciated your work. If submitting something in December, it's tough to get attention. All the normies out there in the rest of our life have things that they want us to pay attention to in December. So now some things with the December cutoff is to help ease the burden on the juries in those last 30 days of the year. If you've got an advanced reader copy of your work, go ahead and submit it. Put on your cover letter that this is an uncorrected proof. This is an advanced reader copy. If it's up on an ARC site, say, hey, here's a code where you can go and get approved for an ARC of this work. However, whatever mechanism you have to get those works in front of the jury, submit it to them early. If you submit an uncorrected proof, you are welcome to submit the corrected final print version later on in the year. We've got ways of tracking it in the system where we can mark it as, okay, this is a duplicate submission, but somebody who read the advanced reader copy wants to go and see what the layout is. If you've got, if you had art added later on, or wanted to see if some of those, see if there were any of the minor adjustments, see how that works. They've got the ability to go and check the new version and see how that impacts their perception of the work. So it only helps you submit early, submit often. Now these 5 to 8 people on the juries go through all of these works over the course of the year. They have regular discussions amongst themselves saying, hey, this is the thing that I really loved. I want to make sure that all of y'all make sure to move this up your to read pile. I think this is definitely something worth paying attention to. And it's also an opportunity for the jurists to get to know each other and to do a little bit of a different sort of professional networking that we normally get to do at a convention or a crit group or something like that. I found having conversations like that very satisfying when I served on a jury, because we all like talking about things that we love, and it's really nice to be able to have some good nuanced conversations with folks about a piece of art that really moved you. Now, at the end of the year, in the first week of January, the jurists are making, or jurors jurist is a legal term. The jurors are, reading the last final things on their list, and everybody compiles their own individual top 10. Those top 10s are shared with the chair of that jury, and those are all used to create a collective top 10 for the jury. If there's, the jury's not allowed to send ties up to the committee. So, they can't say, well, we loved all these children equally, so we're giving them all first place. We need at least 5, because like was mentioned earlier, up to 5 works come from the recommended reading list. After that, we need the top 5 to form the rest of that. And if there are only 4 works that make it through from the recommended reading list, then we need that 6th work from the jury's top 10 list. And having the jury send up a list of up to 10 works is, should there be nothing that makes it through the recommended reading list, then we have a way to make sure that we have a full preliminary ballot of 10 works to put in front of the membership. And those so if there are ties, juries get together, talk amongst themselves, and there may or may not be knife fighting that goes into breaking those ties. But they send us those lists by the middle of January, and then those are used to pair with the works from the recommended reading list. And then there's a nice long process with our verifiers and compilers, and also making sure that everyone gets credited appropriately, that we've got the publishers right, that it'll make the copy editors happy, that we spend a lot of time making sure that the format's correct, and that it's uniform. And
I think for the knife fighting, we do have some recommended processes that the juries can use to peacefully settle their their list. And one thing
knife fighting sounds way more fun than
I know it does.
We break out math formulas, and wait.
We are the Horror Writers Association, so
right.
It's like
never let the truth get in the way of the story.
But one of the things I was thinking while you were speaking, Alex, I wanted to just add is that there's a fantastic resource, the BramStokerAwards.com website dedicated entirely to the Bram Stoker Awards. Please give all thanks to Lisa Morton for how wonderful that site is. Lisa, I think, built and maintains that site. And if you go there and just click submissions, it's pretty big, hard to miss right on the homepage. That page tells you all you need to know about submitting your work to the juries, to the appropriate juries, and it has links to all of the jury portals. And one thing I wanted to note is that we, as of I think the COVID pandemic, we really have stopped entirely receiving any physical books.
Yeah.
So we get some queries, just a handful every year. Can I send you copies of my book? Can I send them to the jurors? And we're no longer accepting those. You can submit everything via PDF, or as Alex mentioned, something like NetGalley, Edelweiss.
Yes.
There's a couple of other services that make advanced reading copies or Galley copies available that we're happy to work with those. We'll work with you or your publisher to get an electronic copy to the jurors in a format acceptable to you, but we don't take physical books anymore.
Yeah.
And part of the process that happens behind the scenes constantly. It has already started, it has been ongoing for 2024. Alex touched on the verification and compilation aspects of the awards. And there are the two different roles. The compilers are the ones who review and put everything through that is submitted to the recommended works list. So if you ever submit a work through the big button that says recommend a work for the Bram Stoker Awards in the members area of horror.org, and don't see that appear immediately on the recommended works list, it's because it's being processed by a compiler. Shauna Darish is our head compiler, and she has some people working with her who verify and, as Alex said, proofread and try to get all the spelling and punctuation correct before that goes through to the list. The other team, the verifiers, are the ones who review each work for eligibility. So essentially, if a work it meets the criteria for a category in the Bram Stoker Awards when it's published, it is considered to be eligible at that moment. Whether it's ever submitted by the author or publisher, whether it's ever recommended, whether it's acknowledged in any way by the Bram Stoker Awards, it's eligible in that year on that first publication that it meets the criteria for a category. And what the verifiers do is they also check information to make sure we have everything correct, but they're also checking to make sure that a work actually is eligible, that it was not previously published, that it does in fact meet the requirements of a category, that it is in fact a work of horror or dark fiction, things like that. And that's such an important part of the process. And we have had to dip in at times and look at works and have some discussions about, is this eligible or not? Or did this publication of this book affect eligibility of this work 2 years later, or things like that? It's come up particularly with first novel a few times, where a novel was submitted and it may have been the author's first widely published novel, but they had published a novel previously through a very small channel or something online or like that, and that unfortunately was their first novel that met the eligibility requirements for first novel. And so this later novel is not eligible for first novel. It's certainly eligible for novel if it meets all the other requirements. So it's a lot to consider when we look at every work that comes through. And it's also something for authors and publishers to consider when they're submitting works, is to really kind of make sure that it's clear when you submit a work to a jury why it's in that category, and that, make sure that you've checked the requirements and are submitting in the correct category. And if you have any uncertainty, just email us at stokerchair@horror.org, and we're happy to help you figure that out.
Yeah. I know creatives have, we are really good at self-sabotage. We're really good at rejection. Don't let that happen. Reach out to us, ask questions, submit it. We have processes in place to make sure that it gets to the correct jury, to make sure that we verify that a work is eligible. But please feed the juries. They are hungry.
Yes, they're looking for stuff to read. We get, Alex, you mentioned that there are some categories where we've had to increase the number of jurors to keep up with the submissions. It will surprise no one that novel and short fiction are two of the biggest categories for which we receive works. And so, we receive a lot fewer works in some of the other categories, but it changes from year to year and it's unpredictable. Yeah. Remember when we launched the short nonfiction category, we'd had for years just a nonfiction category, and decided to add short nonfiction for articles and chapters and things like that versus the long nonfiction, which is books and other long pieces. I was really skeptical on short nonfiction. I thought it wasn't going to get much engagement, and it has gotten so many submissions year after year. It was such
Yeah.
a great category to add. People really responded to it. And we get a lot of recommendations in that category. We get a lot of submissions in that category. For readers who may be listening to this, or for members who may not have something eligible this year, it's really important to recommend works.
Yeah.
Even if you're the only person that recommends that work, let's say a work gets one recommendation and it's you read it, you thought this was really great. I thought this is a stellar piece of writing and it deserves consideration. Recommend it. It
Yeah.
even if it doesn't advance towards the preliminary ballot, it helps the HWA and the horror community create a snapshot of all the good stuff published that year. And a lot of horror readers and to some extent librarians use the recommended works list and the different ballots to find stuff to read or to add to their collections. So there's always value in putting something on that list, even if it doesn't, catch on.
Right. And if I may jump in, I'd like to echo something that Alex said about the jury process, which is doing that early is really going to help, because if you get something onto the recommended list early, then that gives other HWA members time to go and find it and take it in and maybe say, yeah, I'd love to see this end up on the preliminary ballot. I am going to not nominate because that's a later process that we're not doing yet, but I'm going to recommend it to get it to the preliminary ballot.
Yes.
Yeah. And the jurors also keep an eye on that recommended reading list. And there are things that make it to that recommended reading list that don't get submitted to the juries, and that pops up on the, hey, can we get this solicited? Can we reach out to this person and get them to send this work in? Yeah, it's a great way to get more eyes on something. And we'll probably talk a little bit about the opt-in emails. But one of the things that I always do is I will, once a week, I'll take all of those and I'll go over to Submittable and I'll see, all right, did they send it to the jury? Yes. All right. If they didn't send it to the jury, I'm going to reach out to all those authors and make sure that they know that it's not just it's not just the recommended reading list. There's also the jury. So there's the two paths to make it to that preliminary ballot.
And I think that's what makes the Stoker Awards, one of the things that makes them unique and makes the preliminary and final ballot so strong, I think. And I'm sure we could, and a lot of people could sit down and have debates over works that have appeared on the ballots over the last few years. And that's completely fair. But I feel overall the ballots for the last several years have been very strong representations of what's happening in horror, have represented a wide scope of voices in horror and different types of horror. And I feel that we get that result because we have this balance of the juries focusing in on a subset of works, and we have this vast membership recommending stuff that maybe doesn't come to the jury directly. And so you've got this balance of a very focused group working intensely, and then just sort of the rest of us casting a wide net. And anytime we find something good, sort of throwing up a flare to say, hey, here's a good one, and putting it on the recommended list. And if enough people see that, it was interesting to me, but in 2023, two of the most talked about novels, or at least two of the novels I heard the most chatter about, did not make the ballot from the jury. They made it from the recommendations. And I was really surprised because I thought they would have easily been jury picks. So I think that's where you see that sort of complementary approach. And before we jump on anything else, I just want to, I neglected to mention Kimberly Godwin, who is our head verifier. I mentioned Shauna, our head compiler. Kimberly is our head verifier. She does an amazing job. She has a team that works with her that she oversees to check every work that comes in and verify its eligibility or ineligibility, or to raise the question to the overall committee if it's not clear. And so that there can be some more investigation and discussion. But there's quite a large team behind the awards. We have another member joining the committee just recently, Leila Denning, who many of you might know as the HWA's volunteer coordinator. Leila's fantastic. She's a librarian and has a wonderful eye for detail and love for books. And she just joined us, will be coming on as our public liaison. So it was I kind of dropped the ball in trying to get her on for this, but I think we probably spared her trying to make it up as she went along, since she hasn't really started doing the job yet. But I do think the opt-in process is something a lot of people have questions about. Alex, you mentioned that. And I think maybe, Lisa, do you want to talk a little bit about that? I know you've put up the rule, not the rules, but the etiquette for that. And I know you've used that process, and I'm sure you've been on the receiving end of it.
Yeah, and I'm going to jump back a little tiny bit because I see the emails come in through the Stoker Awards website. I also see, I think one of the questions I see most often on both that website and on HWA social media is my self-published work eligible? And I think we get that a lot because other awards, the recommended works have to be submitted by a publisher. They don't take self-published works. We absolutely do.
Yeah.
So if you are a self-published author, you can absolutely either promote your book to HWA's members or submit it to the jury on your own. And they get equal consideration. So that was something I just wanted to put out there right off the bat. But
And there were self-published works on the ballot last year.
Absolutely, yeah. So the opt-in process, yes, that is something that is open to lots of discussion. I think we want people to let HWA's members know that their work is out there and that it's eligible. But please be very aware of the best ways to do that. If you go to the BramStokerAwards.com website and click on the submissions, you will see the do's and don'ts for doing an opt-in email. You are absolutely fine with emailing HWA's eligible voters who have indicated that they are open to that, because some are not. If you have a list of the HWA members who say, yes, I'd like to hear about your work, you can send them an email, but you cannot say, please vote for me, please recommend my work, I'll read your work, anything like that. You can just say, this work is eligible, I'm offering it to you if you would like to consider it. That's it. Don't say, hey, it's already racked up 10, recommendations, whatever. In fact, I don't think we even list the number of recommendations anymore. We used to in the past, and it led to problems like this. So yes, please be very aware of the etiquette when you are doing an opt-in email. And by the way, we do pay attention to these things. I know we did when I was working more with the awards committees. We are very aware of people who either break the etiquette rules or find what they think are clever ways to skirt around them. And you don't want to be one of those people, trust me.
Yeah, we do watch it. We do have ways to sort of see where maybe rec trading is occurring or things like that. And if certainly if it's publicly done, we'll hear about it. I mean, we've had a few issues in the last years, not widespread, nothing major, where people were sort of, I was going to be kind and say bending, but really they were breaking those etiquette guidelines with public posts, and it made it back to us. And in most cases, it's a result of somebody just not understanding what the requirements are. And so we, reach out and say, look, you have to understand this is what the etiquette is. These are the rules. In some cases, it is a rule, depending on how you are referring to your work. And you know, most people are super apologetic and fix it, and that's fine. You know, no one's out to rain on anyone's parade or anything like that. But, you know, we do have to enforce the integrity of the awards as much as we are able to. And I think members by and large work with us on that when there is an issue, which just makes me so encouraged about the horror community every time. You know, people are really happy to kind of rectify a misstep or something like that. So, um,
Yeah,
and
it speaks a
you know,
lot to the integrity of the board.
yeah,
I have to say, most of the offers I've seen have really been very polite, very professional. And, you know, if you're not one of the members who says it's okay to offer me that stuff, you might want to think about it, because you can get some pretty nice publications for free just to be considering them.
yeah, it's a nice perk. Um, and the other thing is that all HWA members can recommend works, I think, right? It's supporting
Yes.
affiliate and active. I think academic and associate can recommend works.
I think everybody who pays dues.
Yeah, everyone in the HWA, we assume that you're a horror reader, a horror fan, that you're following the genre in some way. You know, maybe your thing is comics or movies or whatever. Everyone can recommend a work. We really want to hear from the horror community at large, and
Yeah.
that's another aspect of the recommendation process that I think really helps us out, is getting people who are in different branches of the genre recommending works.
And I've seen some confusion from people who thought they could not recommend works in certain categories. Any HWA paid member can recommend works in any categories, including, for example, screenplay, which seems to be, for some reason, confusing to many people. If you see a movie that you think, wow, that was really well written, please go recommend it.
Absolutely. And the other question, you know, I was thinking back to the self-publishing question you raised, Lisa, that we get less frequently now, which I'm happy to see, but still occasionally, is if you have to be an HWA member for your work to be considered. And the answer very clearly is you don't. You know, succinctly, you do not have to be a member of the HWA. We consider all works published in the genre in all formats that we have categories for every year. Membership is not required. You just need to be a member to recommend works. You don't need to be a member to submit works to the jury. Anyone who has a published work that is allowed under the rules, that being the author, the editor, the publisher, can submit a work, whether the author is a member or not. So it's pretty much, you know, we've structured things to try and include as much of what's published every year or produced every year as possible in the horror genre. And I'm sure, you know, we've had some modifications of the awards over the years. We recently revised the poetry category to allow for single long form poems as well as poetry collections. We have added the middle grade horror novel. Not, I think a couple of years ago, we just added that. It's relatively new.
It's in its third year.
Third year, yeah, that's what I was thinking. Just in recognition of the growth of horror in that category of publishing. So we had YA for many years, and that was very popular, but we've been seeing a lot of activity in middle grade. So
very active, very, very passionate group.
yes. All right. So what else should we cover? I think, Laura, you suggested we talk a little bit about the process from preliminary ballot to final ballot. Absolutely. Yeah. Do you want to cover that?
Okay, but again, jump in if I get it wrong.
Okay.
That is put to a vote. I may need you to remind me what level of membership you need to be at to vote.
Active and lifetime.
Yep.
Okay. And so that is how you get from the preliminary ballot, which is 10, to a final ballot, which is 5, And all of the works on that ballot are considered nominees.
Yes, the final ballot, if you reach that, you're a nominated work, a nominee. And there is, I know we've been talking about sort of the 5, the 10, the different takes from the jury list and recommended list. It's rare, but it has happened. There can be ties on the recommendation side, not on the jury side. The juries have to provide a clean list of their top 10 ranked. But if recommended works that are eligible receive the same number of recommendations, it is possible, if they're in the top 5 for more than 10 works, to appear on the preliminary ballot. It usually only applies when we get down to the last work. So the first 4 works, if the 5th work on that list from the recommendation list, if there are 3 works with the 5th most number of recommendations, we have a tie, and then we would have an extended ballot that year.
So that's another argument for making sure to do your recommendations, right? Because we might have ties that way.
Help us with a point spread.
Yes,
Exactly.
I'm sure everyone lies awake at night wondering how they can help HWA with that.
Recommend stuff that you love.
Yeah, that's it's the best way to do it. Don't sweat, trying to get this person or that person's work up the ballot or up the list or anything. Just recommend what you love, and it's, even if that work doesn't make it to a ballot, it's on that list as, hey, this was something good published that year. And there's always a ton of works on there. It's a great snapshot. The other thing that it does is, once a work is on the recommended reading list, it is possible for the author, editor, or publisher to provide a link to their work for members to access it, download it, and read it. And so you'll see, if you go log into horror.org members area, look at the recommended reading list, you'll sometimes see information to either contact somebody at an email address or click a Dropbox link or something like that. That's an option that the authors have when their work is on that list. So it's an additional way for them to make their work available to membership, to voting membership in particular, but early in the process, it's to everybody, because maybe someone else will read that, having seen it on the recommended list, and recommend it themselves. The other part that happens with the ballot process is we announce the ballot. Usually, I think we announce it in January, and we vote in the first half of February. And before that voting ballot is released, we'll also send out a special mailer to active and lifetime members that includes those same kinds of links. So if your work appears on the preliminary ballot and you want to make sure that every active or lifetime member in the HWA can access a copy of your work to read it and consider it for voting, you can provide a link, a download link, an email, a NetGalley, any, whatever works best for you. And that goes out in a special mailing. And it goes out just to that subgroup. What's that?
Just not an attachment. We can't send it.
No, we can't do attachments. Yeah, we'd never have the bandwidth for it. We'd never get past everybody's
spam filter.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's a lot of opportunities to get your work out there for consideration. The best thing to do is just to make sure you're promoting your work in the way that you normally would. Just make sure people know about it. Don't mention the Stokers. Don't put it out there for Stoker consideration beyond what's acceptable. But take advantage of the HWA's newsletter. Announce your work in the newsletter. Submit your work to be announced on the new releases carousel on the HWA's website, horror.org. Use the Saturday promo post on the HWA's Facebook page or a Facebook group. I always forget if it's a group or a page, but we have several thousand followers on that page. HWA members get a special perk, which is that every Saturday you can post one promotional post to say, hey, this is what I have, it's new, or check out my book. And you can just post there and make sure that people know you have something new I think we also have that option on the HWA's Discord
Yeah.
channel. I'm not on that, so I don't know exactly how it works, but I think that's the other place that you can do that.
Yeah. And in Discord, there's specific locations to make a promotional post. And also there are places where you can, you know, go and talk about works with your fellow horror fans. So it's a little bit more structured, like not too dissimilar to the way that old forums used to be for us, you know, internet elders.
Pioneers. That's for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ways to make sure that membership knows your work is out there and eligible. And it's interesting to me because when I started volunteering with the HWA, I think membership was around, I forget the exact number, it was somewhere between 400 and 600. And we had 200 plus active members. The last time I looked, we had over 600 active members, which means that active HWA members now outnumber the entire membership of the HWA 15 years ago, which is just fantastic. And you know, you can see that in the awards engagement. You see the increase in recommendations, the increase in submissions, the increase in questions, and people really looking at the awards and connecting with them. You know, it's really one of the fun things of being part of the awards committee is to watch all of that and you know, kind of be in the thick of it. So Laura, you have a lot of fun to look forward to as you get up to speed. All right. What other items have we not touched on? I think we've been pretty thorough. There were a few questions we were chatting about earlier about how to know when your work fits into a category. So some of the questions we received recently have to do with things like how much of an anthology or collection has to be original to that publication. So a lot of authors will put together reprint collections with a few new stories of, you know, single author collections. And the main thing with that category is that they can't, there's a certain number or a certain percentage of stories that can't have been previously collected together. So it's really pretty wide open. If you have a collection that's coming out, it's good to have some new material in there. And I think there's, but I don't think it's a requirement that you have a certain amount of new material so much as it is that the reprint material has not previously appeared in the same place before.
Yeah.
We get questions about word count. And we are pretty strict about word count. I think just for the sake of not getting onto a slippery slope, you know, if the minimum requirement is 40,000 words and you come in at 38,500, it's ineligible. And it's really just that, you know, we can't, the amount of extra work and extra uncertainty that comes into sort of trying to bend things here and there is risky.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's heartbreaking, where it's like, yeah, that anthology is 58,000 words, a phenomenal anthology, but not eligible.
We should also mention that anthology has to have a particular number of new material,
Yep.
new stories, which rules out, unfortunately, things like all reprint, year's best kind of things, or if you are doing a collection that is nothing but 19th century authors and you're reprinting all of their classic stories, that is not
Right.
going to be eligible.
Yeah. I believe it's 60%.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that was I'm sure that affected you, Lisa, with the Weird Women anthologies. Which was
It's, you know, it's perfectly fine because doing the book was a pleasure, and
Yeah.
So
Those books are great.
that should be the right attitude, I think.
Yes. And we do every now and then get somebody asking about a work that just doesn't fit any of the categories. You know, that people are not surprisingly, you're a creative bunch, and you come up with creative formats and do things that we never anticipated with books. And it's hard. We always look at it as super closely and really try to find a path to a category for every work that comes up like that. And sometimes it's just not possible, which, like Alex said, is heartbreaking.
And a little of the history on that. There actually are categories that the membership has voted out. Other media, for example, which would have covered things like games and podcasts and radio plays and so forth, was actually voted out by the membership a number of years ago. So those are things that unfortunately we do not have a category for in the awards.
And we may one day in the future have a category for those works. I mean, they are dynamic. Every year we do review the rules on several levels. One is just, hey, what needs to be updated? Where did we run into trouble that maybe we need to tweak the rules so it's clearer? But we also discuss new categories. We discuss how the existing categories are performing. And we get, you know, if you're listening to this and thinking, hey, we really need to add a category for podcasts or games, we have been, or audio in some other format, we've been talking about those for as long as I've been part of the committee. The sort of the logistical issues with those categories are probably better kept for another panel. But we do consider it, and you know, if you have a suggestion for how to approach them, go ahead and send it. I mean, we're always willing to listen. Sometimes we'll get stuff, we'll get information or input from membership that just really helps us see it in a different light, or kind of puts the missing piece in for us. So we do try every year to assess and reevaluate and make sure that the awards are still keeping pace with the genre and with media. And of course, it all wraps up at the big Bram Stoker Awards ceremony, which will be occurring in Stamford, Connecticut at StokerCon 2025. Registrations are on sale now. Hotel reservations are available. Go to stokercon.com. I have to plug StokerCon.
There's an Amtrak station that's like a 10-minute walk at most from the hotel.
That's great. I didn't know that. I knew there was train station right there, but I didn't know it was Amtrak. So that's even better. It's I mean, it's like a 20-minute train ride from New York City. So if you ever wanted to hit StokerCon and do Manhattan for a few days, it's a great opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
And the award ceremony, if you have attended StokerCon, chances are you've attended the award ceremony and you know what that's all about. Or maybe you watched one of the live streams on YouTube. It's really a great celebration of the past year in horror. We have presenters come back who are past nominees and recipients, Lifetime Achievement Award winners, guests of honor to present the awards. We have a keynote address every year from a luminary in the horror genre. Lisa, you were our keynote speaker in, was it Denver or Pittsburgh?
It was Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh, yes.
And it was a tremendous honor to be asked to do that.
And you gave a fantastic talk. And
Thank
of course,
you.
We have the legendary or soon to be legendary Kevin Wetmore, coiner of the phrase Halloween people, as our MC every year. And that's where we also give out the specialty press awards, the service awards, the Richard Lehman's President's Award, the Silver Hammer, the Karen Lansdale Silver Hammer Award, I should say, the Lifetime Achievement Awards, Mentor of the Year, and of course, all of the Bram Stoker Awards, all those lovely haunted houses lined up, waiting for their recipients. All right, so I think we've been chatting for about an hour or so, and we've covered a lot of ground. I'm sure we didn't cover everything. I know there's a lot of intricacies to the awards, so is there anything that any of you would like to add or to sort of cap off our talk?
I will say one thing that irks me a little bit whenever I hear people say this is that the awards don't matter. I hear that somewhat, not incredibly often, but enough that it, like I said, it's one of those things that gets under your skin. I think they do matter on multiple levels. They help to promote the genre. They help to make the public more aware of them. People in publishing do pay attention to the things that are nominated and that receive the final award. I can tell you from my own personal experience that after I received the first novel award, I got multiple inquiries from Hollywood, and they all told me that they found it because of the Bram Stoker recognition. So people who say that it doesn't matter, it really does matter. It matters to both the genre and to, I think, the individual writers. I mean, obviously, receiving a Bram Stoker award doesn't mean your career is going to go into the stratosphere. You have to do that on your own, but it can certainly be helpful.
And I think when people say they don't matter, maybe what they're really trying to say is that if you haven't received a Bram Stoker award, it doesn't mean your work is not good.
Sure.
And that I think is very true. I think obviously, we're talking about in each category, 10 works on the preliminary ballot, 5 on the final, 1 recipient. Obviously, a lot of good work is going to be left out of that list. But the awards do say something, and I think that they're an opportunity to kind of what you're saying, Lisa, for the community to recognize good work. I think Tim Wagner said that once in one of his acceptance speeches, is that he looks at the awards as, hey, these are my peers giving me a pat on the back saying good job. And I think that's a great way to look at it too.
And it's a great way to just, like I said, promote the genre to the public, because the public, frankly, loves awards. So they get more engaged, they get more interested, and I think it is one of the things that does help serve HWA's core mission of promoting the genre.
Mhm.
I know I've seen some heated discussions on Reddit when the awards lists were announced. So they're definitely
And you know
people
what?
paying
That's
attention.
actually good, because it means people are talking.
Exactly.
And I think we've all been on juries, and we know how hard it is to send forward just a list of just 10 out of all that you've seen, because there's so much good stuff on there.
Yeah.
Um,
We have an embarrassment of riches in the
Yes.
horror genre right now.
Absolutely. And I also have to just say, one of the great things about the awards is that the banquet really is a lot of fun. I was told by a friend that you just have to get to the Stoker's Banquet because it's the most fun of the major banquets, that it's called Horror Prom. And, sure enough, people are there dressed in like full Marie Antoinette garb and vampires and all kinds of stuff. And it's really great to see us being the formal Halloween people.
And if anybody can find photos of StokerCon 2024 and see how Laura was dressed, you will not be disappointed. Laura, you were rocking an amazing look at the banquet.
Yeah.
That's not why I brought it up. It was,
No, I know, but then
it
I
was
was
so
thinking,
much
oh yeah, but
fun.
yeah. I also
And,
think of Scott Edelman when I think of the awards, because Scott is always wearing,
yes.
the most colorful, energetic clothing he can find. It.
He was quite dashing.
Yeah.
And the awards tickets, the banquet tickets don't go on sale right when the conference tickets do, but you just go ahead and get your conference tickets and you can add those in once they're available, which is usually around the beginning of the year.
Yes, and if you want to go to the award ceremony but not to the banquet portion, you can. There's the banquet. The ceremony occurs after the banquet, and the ceremony itself, the awards presentations, is open to everybody.
with some limits in seating, depending on the venue.
Yes, I think we'll be in good shape in Stamford, though.
Oh, good.
All right, Alex, any last words for us?
I think I've covered most of it, but I'm just gonna close out with that everyone should honor Halloween in their heart and try and keep it all the year.
Good advice. Oh, there we go. Well, terrific. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this panel, Lisa, Alex, and Laura. I really appreciate it. Thank you for you who are viewing this panel. I hope that you've learned about the awards. I hope that some of our enthusiasm for them and for the process has rubbed off on you. I'm sure you may have questions, and we'll just say again, reach out anytime to stokerchair@horror.org. And we will get back to you with questions. Just, we may be patient if it takes us a couple of days. We all have a lot going on, but we do get back to everybody and try to answer all the questions as clearly as we can. And we're happy to work with you if you need help getting your work into a jury's hands or anything like that. All right. Well, I hope that you enjoy the rest of Halloween in July and August. I think some other panels are in the works as we record this, and so there should be some fun stuff available throughout the summer. And I hope to see all of you here on the panel with me and many of you watching this at the next StokerCon.
Yeah. See y'all in Stamford.